This is Poslink Listen, Living Positive Victoria's podcast by and about people living with HIV, just like me. For more information about the programs and services that LPV offers, please visit our website at livingpositivevictoria.org.au. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter.
Hello, my name is Bo Newham from Living Positive Victoria, and welcome back to Viral Stories, the podcast for our HIV positive storytelling night. This episode was recorded on the unceded lands of the Kulin Nation. For those just joining us, Viral Stories is Australia's first ever storytelling night centering people with HIV. A content warning for today's story as it mentioned sexual violence and sexual assault. Today's story is by Jeffrey Robertson. Jeffrey has been volunteering for Living Positive Victoria for over 20 years as an activist against stigma and discrimination. He was a founding voice in the establishment of support services specifically for heterosexuals of HIV and is a long-standing participant of the Positive Speakers Bureau. Enjoy.
My name's Jeffrey Robertson. I grew up in Sydney in a suburb called Redfern, in an area infamously known as the Block. You had to fight, run, thieve and swear at the age of 5 just to survive. And I really am serious about that. When I was 6, I had to punch my way out of being robbed of my school shoes, my clothes and money and my meal, and happened many times all through my early school years. It was all about survival that taught me to be strong at an early age. I was raped at 13 by my best friend's father. That was something I couldn't run away from because I became extremely homophobic from that day because I had associated that experience with gay men. I was wrong about that, but that was my understanding. I was an apprentice chef at the age of 15, married at 18, father at 2 at the age of 20, and a single father of 2 at 22. My wife travelled away and got a divorce and remarried. She came back 6 years later and wanted to spend time with the children and suggested that I travel. So I did. During which time I worked for Hilton Hotels. I worked in Italy, France, China, Greece and Hawaiian Islands. I was a troubleshooter for Hilton Hotels, managing hotels that had been run down, redoing menus, recruiting, retraining staff, etc. I had an amazing time just travelling and being paid for it. What a wonderful life. I came home when I was 40. My children were all grown up, living their own lives. When I arrived home, it was to meet the lady who was to become my second wife. It was 1990, and we were married in 1992. She gave birth to our first child in August 92, and our second child in 1994. We met at work, fell in love. After a few months, we got serious, and I asked her to marry me on the Ulverstone Beach in Tasmania. We were married in a beautiful park, and to see 2 children born was amazing. I was so smitten with her and everything was perfect. My whole life was to change when I became ill in 1994. When I became ill in 1994. Sorry. Yeah. My whole life was to change. When I became ill in 1994, I was diagnosed as having a chronic fatigue syndrome. Rest and take it easy, said the doctor. It is caused by stress. You'll get over it, although it may take a while, he said. 2 years later, I was getting worse. So I went back to the doctor and he decided to do more tests. He did hepatitis C, HIV and other blood works. I went back for the results 2 weeks later. He informed me I had HIV and AIDS-defined illness called PCP, a form of pneumonia. I had maybe 2 years to live. I had to go to hospital and get it sorted out and start HIV medications. I went home, told my wife. When I told her, she was calm and said, "Don't worry, love, it'll be all right, we'll be okay." But things were to change the very next day. The next day, she made me wear gloves around my children. And the same day, I was admitted to hospital with my viral load very high and my T cells below 200. Normal T cells were above 1,000, and because mine were under 200, that meant I was very sick. My viral load was over 600,000. That was extremely high. I was very sick and spent 3 months in hospital. My journey into the beyond had just begun. I began to deteriorate mentally and physically, grieving the loss of my ability to provide for my family, also grieving my loss and my relationship with my children. In essence, I was waiting to die. I lost everything dear to me. My wife left, basically abducted the children, and after 2 years she told them I'd passed away. Shock horror. So now what do? I was depressed, close to suicide, for several years lived in a deep hole waiting to die, drinking myself into an early grave, I thought. But I kept on surviving on noodles and beer and these medications that really did work, because I don't know anybody who could survive on noodles and beer. Then one day someone challenged my lifestyle. He said, and this was a good friend, and he said to me, while watching me waiting to die, it was hard on him and everybody close to me. You're taking medications, you're keeping alive, you're living with HIV, not dying from AIDS, he said. This was the answer I was looking for. It was like a light bulb went off in my head. It was very cathartic in so many ways. I had to learn about HIV. My doctors told me a little, but I knew barely anything about it. So I decided to educate myself about the virus. My attitude about living with HIV had to change. So I went to a rehabilitation centre to get help with my alcohol issues. Where I was there, I studied HIV and realised I was going to live a fair old age. And as you can see, I've lived to a fair old age. My attitude was about, while there I studied HIV and realised I was going to live to a fair old age. With the advances in HIV and retroviral improving the quality of life of people living with HIV and AIDS, I also worked on my mental health, which helped me greatly. The next 6 months was great. I settled into town, I was staying in a job, got a job and looked forward to life getting better. Or so I thought. The next thing I knew, someone was telling people I was HIV positive. My status was leaked into a very conservative community, and all hell broke loose for me. Someone decided to spray my house with HIV positive faggot and sent letters around to my church. Members that I was positive, and a child molester. I was shattered. I wondered what to do now. I just managed to get all together, and life hit me with another challenge. When a police officer turned up on my doorstep with a restraining order for me to stay away from their children, I claiming that I was stalking them and that my actions were that of a child molester. I knew I had to do something. So I went public and challenged these accusations and went to the newspaper, told my story. I continued to fight these allegations in court. I won the case, the judge stating this was discrimination of my disability and that it was against the law, as HIV back then was regarded as a disability. threatening the other person with jail if this were to happen again. I often think the moment the police brought the restraining order to my home, and when I read it, the accusations in type, I was physically sick, and that had been accused of such a terrible thing. I went on learning about HIV stigma and discrimination and started a group for people living with HIV or Hep C. And this was very rewarding, and personally, I was ready to move forward again. Decided I would attempt to get access to my children. I knew it was going to be tough. And unfortunately, I'd had a stroke in 2003, which caused speech impairment, sight issues, right-sided paralysis, and unable to walk, talk, or see. I was, really in trouble. But I went to a physical rehab ward for 9 months in Warrnambool Hospital. I was getting better and things were changing for the better. I got in contact with my wife and took her to court. I moved to Melbourne in a new housing centre, and new medications were working, and I felt like I knew me. I was to see my children every second week, turn about holidays. My dreams of having my children in my life were coming true. I began to volunteer for people living positive Victoria and the Speakers Bureau, and became a HIV activist about stigma and discrimination. That was nearly 20 years ago. How life great is. And to finish, it was only the other day I was dreaming about the opportunity I had to carry the Queen's Baton relay in the Commonwealth Games in 2006 for the work I do in the community, and having all my children and family there to celebrate that day with me. Most of all, on my wall in my home is a uniform of the Commonwealth Games baton relay team, and knowing my daughter, it's on the wall in a frame, and knowing my daughter would like it for her home, to be able to share it with her means the world to me. I've had some real bad memories, painful experiences, but I have also learned and grown from that. I have a beautiful memories too, of falling in love, to my children being born, or friendships I've made. The Commonwealth Games baton were very special. And after I'm gone, I imagine my daughter proudly explaining to her friends. I imagine it would invoke positive thoughts in their minds and hopefully be inspiration for the people that she shares it with. I also no longer tolerate homophobia. Most of my friends are gay. I love them like I would like my family. Life is positive. I'm now living with HIV, not dying from AIDS. Thank you.
Viral Stories was made possible with the support of the City of Melbourne Connected Communities Grant. Viral Stories is hosted by Living Positive Victoria, who have been representing people with HIV in Victoria since 1988.
That was the second viral story in this series. Remember to subscribe to stay up to date with our podcast, and for more information, please visit livingpositivevictoria.org.au.